Welcome back to the LarryB YouTube channel. In today's class, we are going to learn how to make this beautiful shoulder dart bustier. This type of dart that goes from your waistline through your shoulder area, as you have seen. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. This is something you like to learn. Kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so I started by marking my vertical measurements. This is my bust point, my armhole line, bust point on the bust, and my waistline. So if yours is going to be to the full blouse length, you just measure to that. Okay, and then I'm going to take my shoulder measurements. My shoulder is 16, divided by 2 is 8. So here, from here, you can see I'm marking 8 inches. Okay, so for my neckline, I'm just going to leave it at the 3 inches by 3 inches natural neckline for the front. So after drafting or probably sewing it, I am going to change it to whatever neckline that I want to work with. So for my shoulder slope, I'm going to come down by 1 inch here, and then I'll connect just like this for my shoulder slope. Okay, so now for my armhole, this is going to be like a tentative armhole, because remember this is a shoulder dart bustier. So by the time I'm done with my dart, I will need to redraw my shoulder my armhole, so I'll just leave it tentatively like this. So my actual bust measurement is 40, divided by 4 is 10. So here I'm going to mark the 10 inches. Then you can go ahead and add your seam allowance to that as well. So I'll come here now and draw my armhole curve, and then I'll move straight to the dart. So for the dart, you're going to start by getting your bust span measurement, also known as your nipple to nipple. So for me, the bust span is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So on my under bust measurement, I'm going to mark the 4 inches. On my bust points, I'll do the same thing, and then I'll mark the same 4 inches on the waistline as well. So all of this I'm going to make into a straight line. So to make this our shoulder dart bustier, just like we mentioned, whatever you have on your shoulder line here, you're going to divide it into 2. That's what you have left after taking your neckline measurement, and then you mark the midpoint there, and then you connect from that midpoint to your bust point line, so you can match up with the bust span measurements that you have. Okay, so now that is out of the way, the next measurement I'm going to take is my dart measurement. So I'm taking 1 inch on both sides for the dart on the bust, and I'm doing the same thing on my waistline as well. So these 2 darts that I have taken now, I'll make them into a straight line, and then I'll connect them to my bust point using a curved ruler. So you just leave like half an inch before your bust point, so that it's not going to be so sharp. And then we're going to go ahead and then connect them just like this on both sides. Okay, so just make sure that you have a really nice curve, and then you don't have anything sharp. So if you need to just blend it in again, you can do that. So now we are taking the dart for the under bust. So the next part we're going to be working on is our shoulder dart. So for that, I'm going to take 1 inch on both sides of this dart as well. Okay, and I'm going to connect that to my bust point, just like I did for the waist and the under bust dart. So for this now, you can just connect it like this, or you can just take your upper bust, that's the upper chest measurement. So to get this, you can measure 4 inches from your bust point. Okay, this is not compulsory actually, but I just like to have this line because it's going to guide me when I want to pad it. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that line. It's going to be like a guide for me when I want to cut my padding. I'm going to be stopping it around that area, so I'm going to label this the upper bust. Okay, so now on that point, you can tighten it by taking half an inch on both sides. Okay, so you connect from here to this before you get to your under bust. I hope you understand that. So I'm using the slightly curved side of this ruler to connect from here to here first, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and connect like this. So here also you come up by like half an inch before you connect this to what you have coming from your shoulder. Sorry, my ruler shifted. Okay, so you can see what we have. So the same thing is what you're going to do on this side. So from here to here you connect first, and then from there, using the slightly curved side of your ruler, you connect back to your shoulder. So now, assuming we connected directly from here, you can see that it's not going to tighten as much as we have tightened. It would have stopped around here. So it's totally up to you and what you're aiming to get. So now you don't want any part to be sharp. So what you want to do now is to find a way to just make sure that you blend in all your lines correctly. Okay, you can also use your free hand to do that. Don't want any part to be sharp. So after getting that out of the way, the next thing now is to take our side measurement. So for my bust, I already took my bust measurement, but here I have a shortage now. So the shortage that I have, I'll just measure it from that I used for my dad. This is around half an inch. So I'm going to add it back here. For my waist, the waist is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So here I have 3 inches. I'm just going to continue my measurements, keeping the dart so that I'll not have any issue. And then I have my 7.5 inches here, and I'll add 1 inch for seam allowance. So here I'll go ahead and connect my waist to my hip. So for my bust dart, on my bust point here, I'm going to come down here by 2 inches, and then using my ruler, I'm going to connect it to the bust point. So these are all the darts that we are taking. I'll just shade it out now so that we can see it well. Okay, now that we have shaded it out, you can see this is the shoulder dart, the bust dart, and the dart we took on the under bust and the waist. So now if you notice, you will know that the measurement that we have on this upper body is no longer accurate because of all of these darts that we have taken. You can see I took 2 inches on the shoulder, and then as you progress it reduces. So now to add all of this back, now we need to add them to our armhole area, and then we will, after doing that, now we'll connect our armhole. There are 2 ways you can do this actually. We have a line here which can serve as a guide. Okay, so what you want to do here, we took a dart of 2 inches. So the 2 inches that we took here, you will just extend this shoulder slope that we have, and then you mark out the 2 inches, which is around here. So on this upper bust area, the total dart that I have here is 1 inch. Remember, we took 1 on both sides. So here you're going to mark the 1 inch. So you can just, this is around 1.5. Okay, and then you mark the 1.5. So all of these are just guides to show you the lines that your new armhole is going to take. So you can see how I'm trying to connect everything together and make sure that my new armhole just rhymes perfectly. So like I said, there are 2 ways you can do this. You can do this manually, just like we have done. You can see our new armhole, or you can use your dart closing method to do that. So I'll just show us that on another paper. So for the back, I have my armhole line and my waistline here. So for my zipper allowance, what I do first is on the waistline, I'm going to come in by 1 inch for the zipper to avoid zipper bulge there, and then I'm going to connect to the starting point. So after that, now I'll go ahead and take my actual zipper allowance of 1 inch. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and connect them together. So all of this is going to go off. It's no longer part of my zipper allowance. So with this, you're not going to have any bulge on your back. So from there, now you start taking your measurements. The shoulder is 8 inches. The neck measurement that I used was 3 inches, and then 1 inch for my slant. Then after that, I'll go ahead and mark my bust measurement of 10 inches. You can see I'm taking the measurement from where the allowance stops, and here I'm going to mark 7.5 for my waistline, and then I'm going to add 1 inch for the dart. So after all of this, I'll add 1 inch for my seam allowance, and then I'm going to connect all of this together. Okay, so with my curved ruler, I'm going to go ahead and mark my armhole curve just like this. So the next thing now is to create our dart. So for the dart, you can either take your bust band from inside from where you have your seam allowance like this. So if you're working with that, it means your 4 inches is going to be around there, but for me, I just take it where my actual measurement is, which is around here, before taking the bulge. So now if you are taking from this outer part, it's going to give us around 5 inches. Okay, you can see. So here I'm just going to go ahead and mark the 5 inches on both sides so that I have a straight line. I hope you understand that. So now the 1/2 inch on both sides that we left for the dart, we're going to take it and connect to your armhole line. So you can leave your back like this, or you can just connect it, especially if you want something to go through the shoulder line. So here, just like we did for the front, you subtract, you divide what you have there, and then you connect this to your shoulder point. And then here I'm going to mark 1 inch from my neck measurement. So you can see how simple it is to draft the back. It's very simple, it's not complicated, and we are done with the back drafting. Okay, so I'm gonna head to cut out the shoulder dart and the under bust dart. So I just want to show us the difference we have for the front. So for the front waistline, the first waistline is 18, while the back waistline was 16 inches. So the difference we have from the front and back waistline was what we took as the under bust dart, which is here. So if you place your front and back together by the side now, you can see that they don't match. But immediately you close the under bust, the bust dart, and then you place it, you will see that they are exactly the same thing. So I hope we take note of that and understand that perfectly. So I'll go ahead and cut out the waist dart as well, and then I'll transfer this to my fabric. So I'm gonna have to cut it out on my fabric. These are my patterns, and then I added 1/2 inch allowance to the dart areas. I did not add any seam allowance on the side because I added 1 inch to my pattern already. So now I'm going to detach the pattern from the fabric. And also remember, I said this upper bust line is going to guide you on where your bust part is going to stop. I don't want my padding to get to the neck area, so I just used that line as a guide. I already sew in my pad, and you can see that it stops at exactly that point. You can see this is the side, and you can see where I stop padding my pad to that as well. I have a detailed tutorial on how you can cut out your pad for your side, for your bustier pattern. So now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine now, and then I will join the dart lines together. So I'm on the machine now. You just take the first side and then you place them together. So when you are cutting, you make sure you notch your under bust area. I notched mine, although the wording that I sew will also indicate my under bust for me. So I'm going to be sewing by the 1/2 inch allowance that I left. So you make sure that you arrange it well, and when you get to your under bust, you stop and try to raise your foot. So you continue sewing by the 1/2 inch allowance that you left. You can see you sew slowly, and then once you see that the two sides does not match again, you raise the first one, and then you use your hand to control it so that it's going to match with what you have under. So just like that, you keep sewing it. Continue sewing. It's very simple. It's easier to sew than the Armhole princess dart, because it's just a straight dart. So you continue sewing like that till you sew till the end. So now this is what it's going to look like. So after sewing this side now, you just take your other side and sew. So you can see how beautiful and well padded this looks. So I'll just grab the second side as well, and then the same way I have sewn this, I'll go ahead and sew the second side. So that is how you sew your bustier pattern together. So when you get to the under bust, you stop and then continue sewing just like this by the 1/2 inch. Sorry, my padding was not enough, that's why you see some place like that. So I'll continue sewing by my 1/2 inch, and once I get to the place where it doesn't match, I'll use the one on top to control the one below it, and then I'm going to continue to sew by the same 1/2 inch till I sew everything completely. So you can see. So after sewing it now, you take it to your ironing table and then you iron it out. And now I'm going to cut whatever neckline that I want for this. So now this is what it looks like on the table. So you just go ahead and iron your dart lines and open your seam. You can see the padding that we have there. It stops exactly at my upper bust area, which I marked on my pattern. So this is what we have. So for the neckline, remember we just have the 3 inches by 3 inches natural neckline now. So if you want a regular neckline, all you just need to do is to put your pattern on fold. You can cut it together with your pattern before sewing, or you can just cut it now that it is sewn. So after putting them together on fold like this, you mark whatever neckline you want and you connect it. That's if you are using something that is symmetrical. But if you are working with an asymmetric neckline whereby one side will be different than the other, all you just need to do is to decide on the neckline type that you want, and then you connect it together just like that. So assuming I want to work with an asymmetric neckline, so you can maintain the 3 inches width, or I can just increase it to around 4 inches if I want, just like this. I'll do the same thing for the other side as well. I'm going to increase it to 4 inches. Okay, so this is what the bust looks like now. So just go ahead and iron your seam line open, and I have also done the same thing for the back. So you cut your lining the same way and sew it. So these are my 2 back pieces as well. So now you can decide to cut out whatever neckline that you want. So you can put it on fold to cut your neckline if it's a regular symmetric neckline, and if it is asymmetric, you can just lay it like this and cut. You can also cut this on your pattern before sewing, but I just like to cut mine like this. So I'm working with an asymmetric neckline, so from here you can maintain the 3 inches neck width, or you can increase it. So I'm just going to increase this box to about 1 inch, so that's going to leave it at 4 inches. Then I'm going to mark the depth that I want from my shoulder points as well. So I'm going to be working with a depth of around 6 inches, okay, which is here. So the same thing I'll do to the other side as well. I'm going to increase this other side as well by 1 inch, and then I'm going to mark, so whatever neck depth you want to use for this, but I'm just doing the regular asymmetric, the common one. So here I'm just making this part straight, and then this other part I'll go ahead and use my curved ruler to connect it to my neck points just like this. So you can do whatever neck measurement that you want basically. So from there I'll grab my scissors now, and then I'm going to cut out this neck design that I have. You can see that I even went lower than what I planned initially, and here you go ahead and cut like this as well. So you cut your lining the same way you have cut your neckline as well for the main bodies. And then so you can see the neckline that we have now. So this neckline that you have, you make sure that you reconcile with your back. Remember we use 3 inches by 3 inches for the back as well. So for the back, I'm also going to change the neck width to 4 inches by increasing it by another 1 inch, so that it's going to have the same shoulder measurements for me to join it easily. And then for the depth of the back, I can go as low as 6 inches, and then I'll grab my ruler and connect. And you can make your back asymmetric as well. It's totally up to you and the design that you want. So after connecting like that, you arrange well, and then you go ahead and cut. So like I said, you can do this on your pattern as well, but the reason why it's preferable to do this is if your neckline is going to enter into the dart lines. Okay, if it's not going to enter into the dart line like the one I have here, you can see that I just worked with my center back alone. But if it's going to enter into where you have your dart, so once you have sewn it, it's going to be easier for you to control that way. So now I'll go ahead and join the front and back together, and then take it to the mannequin so that we can see what it looks like. So I have joined the front and back together by this side, as we have seen, and this is what it looks like. You can see how beautiful and well carved the bustier looks like. So you just need to iron it well, and then you have what we see here. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.